Good morning, and I want to welcome everyone here today and invite you to entertain the idea of what the heck does Let's Talk Turkey mean? Where in the world did that title come from? And actually it just came like that. Connie and I were going over the schedule, and she said, okay, well, what are you going to talk about then? I said, oh no, let's talk turkey. So I sort of stuck, and that was it. So I had to make up a talk about it, and there you go. So no heavy-duty planning here, as far as giving it, going into meditation and saying, okay, well, what's my topic going to be for the Sunday after Thanksgiving? But rather just being open to the spontaneity and just the creativity of whatever Spirit has in mind. And I know that there's a quote from A Course in Miracles that says, a healed mind doesn't plan. And, it's so, and I'm not referring to myself by any means as having the most healed mind on the planet, don't get me wrong, but I think that so often that we do get caught up in overanalyzing, overthinking, overplanning, that we get in our way. We get so caught up in the plans and all these little tedious pieces of the puzzle that we lose sight of the moment. We tend to get too caught up in all this stuff instead of just being here now. And of course, this past week, Turkey Day is always sort of the kickoff, for the holiday season. And when you get together, you always tend to be drawn to your family, most likely, if you have a family that you're able to connect with. That tends to be the MO for many people. But that being said, a lot of people have their birth family and their chosen family. Well, some people maybe go to their chosen family to celebrate Thanksgiving. But either way, when I say let's talk turkey, it's kind of like, okay, here we are. What are we doing with all this knowledge that we've been gathering over the past several months and years? I mean, all of you guys are, I would say, I often say I'm preaching to the choir here, because you guys have certainly put in your time and your energy and your commitment to your spiritual path. So it's not like I'm sitting here teaching you all anything really at all, but we come together to experience as a spiritual family that which is the reality of who we are. And then we make a commitment to sort of charge our batteries on Sunday mornings and maybe some other things that we do during the week. And then we take it out into our daily lives, whether it be in your family or in your workplace or wherever. But it really is about what are you doing with the knowledge here? Are you just like, oh, that's interesting, and out the door, and where are you going with all this? And of course, I always find that Turkey Day is a great opportunity to see where you are, because when you get with your family, there's many opportunities for spiritual growth and healing. It's like generally, isn't it funny how all those issues come up at the Thanksgiving table? You sit here and as I've mentioned earlier about a healed mind doesn't plan, all the planning that some people put into the meal, and the preparation and making sure that the little place cards are in the right place. People take it to different extremes. Now, we took the easy way. We ordered a turkey, picked it up that morning, and brought it home and carved it. And it was an interesting lesson for me this week, because we had Ellen's grandchildren here, and they're adorable. And all of a sudden, I was in the kitchen preparing, and I was warming things up. So as I was warming things up, and but I did actually put it out in a pretty way. And the kids come in, and all of a sudden they sit down at the table, and they start eating, and then it was just like no one was really into it. And I was like, well, can't we say a prayer? And they're like, well, the kids are gobbling their food down. And I was a little ticked, I have to admit. I was not in my peaceful mode at that point. And so it was an interesting experience. And then we ate the food in about 15 minutes, and that was it. I was like, that's interesting. So I'm glad I didn't prepare the food, actually. Because I probably would have been more ticked. But anyway, but it's all, I recognize as I was in the middle of my my little bit of irritation that it was, that, you know, as A Course in Miracles teaches us, we're never upset for the reason we think. I thought it was the kids, you know, just gobbling their food and everyone else lollygagging around in the kitchen, and it really wasn't that. The Course in Miracles says that we're never upset for the reason we think. We think it's because of this condition or that circumstance that we're upset, but the Course says we're really only upset for one reason, and that reason is because we believe that we're separate. We feel alone. We don't feel a part of. And it doesn't mean necessarily that we have to feel like we're in a big group necessarily, but it really is that disconnection from God that we feel. And the Course says that's impossible. We're never separate from God. We're never separate from each other, except in our mind and our choice to do so. So, you know, if I could have just pulled myself in and said, I'm never upset for the reason I think, and, you know, I choose to know my connection with my Creator, rather than looking for you guys to act the way I want you to act to make me happy. Does that sound familiar?
Very
you know,
much so.
it's really a game that we play, you know. And I think that one thing, we talk about the ministerial classes that are coming up with ADL. And the ministry is, for some people, they get into the ministry because they want to open a center. They want to maybe do ministerial services like weddings and memorials, or they want an umbrella of protection on their healing, for their healing work. But more than that, really what the Alliance of Divine Love says is that our church is on our back, and that we're making a deeper commitment to really live by that premise, that what would bring the highest degree of love into every circumstance and condition. And when we do that, it does change your life. Doesn't mean that we don't have the snags along the way, but it does mean that we take ownership of it. We recognize that I'm not at peace, so how can I change my mind about it rather than projecting my stuff onto someone else? Because it's never about what's going on out here. It's all about what's going on in here. So, you know, when we're talking Turkey, you know, it's time to, you know, grow up and step up. You know, am I just going to be a victim of the world I see, and I'm going to let the external circumstances of the world dictate my peace of mind and my happiness, or am I going to be willing to step up and take ownership and know that I can choose peace instead of this? I'm willing to see beyond my need to judge this situation. I'm willing to let go of my agenda and put it in the hands of God. And last night on Piers Morgan, I was watching that, and Joel and Victoria Osteen were on there. And I just think they're wonderful. I mean, they're so... They're
full of joy.
They're just full of joy. You feel it, and you sense it, and they're always smiling. And I think they're the real deal. I do think that definitely they're not just coming on TV with the big, you know, smile and dimples, and then when they go home, you know, they're, you know, beating each other up or anything. I think it's a real deal. And although I don't agree 100% with their spiritual... What's the word? Dogma, or doctrine maybe, or beliefs, whatever. It's, I do think that, you know, it works for them. And, you know, it's really not about us making a choice of saying, well, this is the path, just because we're into this path that everyone else is wrong. But, you know, really, when we can look at someone and recognize, well, wow, that person's happy, that person's prosperous, that person is at peace. What is it that makes them tick? And I think that one thing that you know, he does repeat over and over and over is, you know, the idea that, you know, whatever's happening in the world, we do have a choice of how we respond to it. And that really is the bottom line for peace and joy and happiness. If, you know, wouldn't it be nice if, regardless of what was happening, how, you know, I could always be happy? And it is possible. I know it from experience. Don't always go there. But I do know that when I'm not at peace, I've chosen against the voice that leads me there. I've chosen to stay in my ego thought system. I've chosen to judge. I've chosen to be upset or angry. But when I really do step into saying, okay, I can choose peace, Holy Spirit, help me to see a miracle here because I'm really upset. I could have done that at the dining room table the other day instead of like, eating my food like, thinking to myself, I can't believe this. And, but no, I didn't. So I hung on to it for a minute. But, once I recognized it, I didn't choose to place blame, but rather say, okay, that was an interesting experience and a place where I can do better next time. And the Course and all the other spiritual teachings that we discuss here, and even with, Joel and Victoria, for example, it's not about beating ourselves up. We're all doing the best we can. It's just about recognizing that we still have some healing that could be taking place. That we are human beings having a spiritual experience. Okay, or excuse me, we're spiritual beings having a human experience. Yeah, I messed that up. And, darn it!
That was intentional.
That wasn't intentional. Oh yeah, it was. That was intentional. But anyway, that being said, to lighten up on ourselves, it's not about beating ourselves up, reinforcing our guilt. Guilt is a big cinder block between us and God, us and peace. And there's nothing to be guilty of. We're not guilty. We're sinless, okay? We're perfect. And anything that gets in our way, guilt, expectation, self-judgment, all of those things are obstacles to peace. So really, when we recognize, okay, I'm in a state of upset, and I'm angry or tired or whatever, I can make that choice for peace always. So it really does. One thing that I remember that I got into not several years ago, maybe 5 years ago now, was the mastermind principles. And, the mastermind groups, and Napoleon Hill was actually a very, very cool guy. I mean, he would actually, the book, Think and Grow Rich, is actually a classic in the motivational arena. But besides that, it's a very deeply spiritual teaching. And one thing I found fascinating about Napoleon Hill was that he would actually create a group bringing in the energies of George Washington, Abraham Lincoln, Thomas Jefferson, Jesus, Gandhi. He would bring these people in and have a conversation with them at a spiritual level and ask them for guidance and direction. So even that the fact that they're not here in the physical body doesn't mean that we can't have that connection. So a lot of these teachings were really derived from great minds that no longer walk the planet. So, we're not lacking resources whatsoever, especially now with the information age and technology. I mean, there's so much information out there. And it's just a button away. I mean, you can just what would, I want to know what this is about. What's Urantia? Type in Urantia, and then you got 5 million things you can click on. You could be studying Urantia from here to eternity, or whatever it is. And there's no limit to what we can learn and what we can get access to. So really, what we have to do, though, is for us to, really sense and know and live by the premise of who we truly are. We have to lift that veil, and that veil is judgment. And so how do we do that? Well, I would suggest, one of the most visually helpful things I've ever seen was that image of the stick man. And basically the stick man image, if I just do the head here, okay, I got a head, and I got the little body, and then I got this this other little circle here, which represents the body, actually, stick, body, neck, body. Okay, so I needed to draw it out. But basically, the head cut in half represents conscious mind, subconscious mind. And so what really the stick man represents, and it was created back in the 30s as a means of helping people to understand the mind-body connection. It was actually created by a doctor. And the doctor basically said, his name was Thurman Fleet, and he was seeing patients come into his office all the time, and they were, they had this illness and that illness, and they would make up all these stories of illness and come in, and he was recognizing that there was a strong mind-body connection there. So what he recognized was, okay, well, take a little more responsibility for your thoughts, and you can actually create a different experience. Because what happens is our dominant thoughts are what's creating our reality. And what we have to do in this subconscious or unconscious mind that we have, which is where all of those, programs of our childhood are really embedded, that, a lot of times people will actually, by the time we're 5 years old, that we've pretty much got our MO locked in pretty strong, okay? And most people, they say the number is about 97%. 97% of the people on the planet live their entire life based on those programs. Don't even question it. Well, I do that because my mom did it. Or, that's what the church told me to do, or whatever. So most people don't even question that. But there's a few seekers like yourselves who get up and say, there has to be a better way. And that's how A Course in Miracles came to be. When Helen Schucman said there has to be a better way, and I'm determined to find it. Well, same thing with us. We sit here and we say, that doesn't make sense anymore. So I'm willing to explore something different. So what we need to do is really pay attention to what we're feeding our conscious mind. And I look at it as really my dominant thoughts. If I just make those, only those which are inspiring, those of oneness, those of unity, those of peace and love, and I just, really purge, just bombard my conscious mind with those things, then what happens, it's like I'm flushing out all the old belief systems and patterns of thought. And it is possible. And, we don't have to be bound or burdened by our past anymore. We just have to be really attentive to what we're feeding our conscious mind. And that includes, who you surround yourself with, what television shows you watch or don't watch, what music you listen to, the question we can always ask ourselves is this action, is this thought, is this situation bringing me closer to the awareness of God and oneness, or is it keeping me distanced from it? So you got to really take responsibility and purge those thoughts that no longer serve. And when we do that, life becomes different. There's the adage that says, we don't see the world as it is, we see the world as we are. So if I see a world of suffering and conflict and pain, then it's about me coming in and fixing my projector, not about me going out and trying to fix or change anything or anybody. And that's a reverse program that we're not really trained to do. Even now, this morning, watching, Sunday morning, I always flip it on because there's always something good there. And there was a story about, there was 4 or 5 people that literally had been diagnosed with terminal illnesses, and they were stressing the importance of a positive attitude and how that helped them. One of which was Lance Armstrong, and the doctors are saying, oh God, that there's no proof that attitude has anything to do with healing. I'm like, well, that's interesting. What school they go to? And but it was, and they were adamant about it. Because, it goes back to the Newtonian idea that we're out here, we diagnose the problem and we're going to fix it. Where, more of a Zen approach or a quantum approach is knowing that everything out here is a reflection of who I am. So, it's all about clean, and taking responsibility, stepping up and owning everything in our life. And embracing everything in our life, and recognizing too what's my role in this situation. My latest lesson is I've just all of a sudden realized in the middle of the night last night, well, what the heck are you doing? You're doing way too much here. It just hit me. I mean, people are like, oh, you do so much. I'm like, I'm fine. And then it's like that. Well, I was like, oh my God, too much. And so I realize now I'm at that, as Greg Braden calls it, that choice point, okay? I can choose to pay attention and do something differently, or I can choose to just continue to barrel down the highway like I have been. But, these things are all, it's all good. I'm grateful for that because it took that, I think it took that last little peg that just was the one that said, Shar, too much. And when you recognize that, I can see that as, instead of being upset, I can see that as a blessing and said, you know what, that was the one thing, even though it really was not a fun experience and I don't really like it, but I can also recognize it as the gift that made me finally just say, okay, got it. And so, got it. And yeah, so I'm a little thicker than some of you guys out there. It's like they say, we don't have to wait till, life gets so difficult or so challenging or so bad. It's up to us when we want to, make the changes. Even if it doesn't seem like there's that much going on in your life that you could make a shift from fear to love. You can always, get off at this level instead of here. So I'm encouraging you guys to really recognize, okay, what patterns am I recreating that no longer serve me? And what patterns, give yourself a pat on the back too, what patterns also are you creating that are serving you? You guys are masters out here, and there's many good things that you all are reinforcing. So, what we focus on expands. If I'm focusing on negativity, I will get more negativity. If I'm focusing on love, I will have more love. And so it's up to us to really say, okay, got it, and take that step forward and move in that direction. So it really has, moving into this holiday, and I made mention of it last week, it is a challenging time for a lot of people because you really want to get the family, or you want to have the event, or you want to have, you want to make it nice, okay? And the most nice thing I think we can do is to be that presence. So if you're at the dinner table or at the family function or whatever, wherever we are, if we can hold that presence of peace and understanding and love, that will give far greater long-term gifts than anything that you could buy and put under the tree. It really is saying that I can be this presence of love, and no matter how many times someone tries to push my buttons, that I don't have to respond. So give yourself that gift, number one, to yourself first, but also to your family. Say that I'm going to be this presence of this, wonderful, light-filled being. I'm going to enjoy every minute of my family and my friends, and I'm not going to place any expectation, and I'm not going to look for you to do it different this year, and it doesn't have to be perfect, and I don't expect anything from anybody. Because when we can stand in that state of consciousness and that state of being, then we can we've let go of our agendas, and we can really enjoy it. The whole idea of the Course in Miracles speaks of holy versus special love. And I think that is such a great example of relationships because, we think that we understand what love is, but really we base it on conditions totally. And, it's like, well, if you fit in my little box here and my little checklist of how I want you to be, then I'm going to love you. But the minute you step out of that box, then, you're kicking them down the street. And it's really up to us to be willing to say, we were created in the likeness and image of God. We are extensions of that perfection. We have the potential to be Christ-like. As Jesus says to us, he comes to us as our elder brother, our teacher, and our friend, and he says, we all have that potential. The only difference between us and Jesus, us and Buddha or other masters, is that they choose to focus on love. They choose to listen to the spirit of the Holy Spirit, which is that of joining, rather than the ego. We tend to get caught up in the dramas. That's why we're not enlightened. But we all have that potential. So it really has to do with, you want to know where you are. I think if we really want to know where we are spiritually, how are we at the Thanksgiving and Christmas table? And so I'm giving myself this as a marker for how I'm going to be. I'm going to West Virginia to spend Christmas with my family in a couple of weeks. And I know that you guys, I'm sure many of you have wonderful plans to be with family. So let's all reflect on that and see what we can do, how we can show up and to be that presence. And I really know that if we do that, that we're going to move major mountains, you know, literally. We won't get caught up in the littleness. We'll experience the grandeur, and we'll just see the totality of everyone's total essence instead of their faults and flaws. And that is a beautiful place to be. So it's time to talk turkey and step up and live it. We all know what to do. So what are we going to do with it? And I chose a song today for us to close because I talk about something that's uplifting and makes you feel good. You know, music, there's certain music that makes me really feel good and happy and joyful. And then there's music that, you know, how often you play these songs that are like, oh, he done me wrong, you know, and, but, you know, it really does, everything we do, you know, you can choose things that make you feel good or choose things that make you feel lousy. So, you know, choose love, choose life, choose peace, and have a wonderful, let's have a kickoff here today to the holiday season and know that we can show up fully embracing it and having a great time. And I'm really looking forward to moving into 2012 because I think it's just, you know, there's so much anticipation and excitement about what's going on our planet. And this is so exciting. So I don't want to miss a minute of it. I want to fully embrace it. I want to love it. And I want all you guys with me on the journey because I think we're going to have a lot of fun. And Brian, I'm glad you're going to be here next week because I think he's going to share some things with us which will actually be very beneficial for us to move into the next 12 to 18 months because it's shaking, baby. So, so namaste.